always on the move, working towards our goals, striving for greatness, and fulfilling our ambitions. We are constantly walking the path to our uncharted destination. It's no surprise that there is something about the sense of journey that compels us and draws us towards an adventure, an epic quest that a chosen group of individuals was tasked to overcome. Over the years, JRPGs have become iconic as a genre due to their rich narratives and mystical worlds. JRPGs have embraced the idea and identity of the hero's journey and adapted it gracefully into the gaming format. The age-old genre has molded and shaped the industry and the sense of journey as an immersive experience that rivals that of its contemporaries. Now we're in 2022, and I'm looking back on how much this space has evolved, and it's really no surprise to me that Tales of Arise is our nominated JRPG of 2021. By the time I had seen the credits roll and clocked about 60 hours with the game, I could tell why this game has become so adored among fans of the series and the genre alike. With its addictive combat, beautiful diverse worlds, and empowering story that grips you throughout each of its story arcs. Tales of Arise is a beautiful open world adventure that is reminiscent of the JRPGs of old but reinvigorated for a modern audience, that tells a compelling narrative and contains a world full of rich lore. The game remains digestible and accessible for someone looking to get into the series, or JRPGs in general. We set off on a grand adventure following a band of heroes on a quest for liberation, primarily our protagonist Alphen. The game is bathed in rich and vibrant anime aesthetics. It's beautiful and full of fine details, making the world a real treat to explore. This flair and attention to detail seeps into every aspect of this game. According to Yusuke Tomazawa, the producer for Tales of Arise, when they began developing this game, the goal in mind was to evolve the Tales formula and reevaluate the direction the series was heading. This is more than likely due to the negative reception around Tales of Systeria. The final product is a deep game that still embodies the identity of the series, but follows a much darker story, a smaller cast of characters, and a large variation of gameplay mechanics. In short, this game is a great feat and provides strong reassurance that the future that this series is heading in is a bright one. This is Tales of Arise.
I want to feel your heart right now. You are the place, my only hope.
The story follows a conflict between two planets of Dana and Rena. The technological Renans have waged war and won against the Dunans and have now enslaved them to gather their energy. The game puts us in the shoes of Alphen, who is a Dunan slave who has no recollection of his past and cannot feel pain. Upon rescuing a Renan woman named Shion, the two set on a journey to overthrow the Renan rulers and liberate the world of Dana. This may sound on its surface like a typical shonen adventure, and at first it is, but trust me when I say there is more to this narrative than what is presented, which leads me into my next point. One thing that I think Tales of Arise delivers well on is its payoff on the major plot points that it sets up and the world that it creates. Although there are a few predictable moments here, the overall story delivers an action-packed adventure that hits all the right notes and provides answers to the questions that it poses. A large contributor of how well the story beats land is due to how fleshed out the world is. Every city in Dana is distinct and rife with its own societies, politics, and struggles. Although this game may exhibit some predictable anime tropes throughout the story, the changing direction that this narrative takes the game at times will catch most off guard, and most will be satisfied by the time the credits roll. The pacing for this game for the most part is pretty good. However, there are some moments that feel stretched out and feel like they exist to help pad the game out. On the contrary, towards the later half of this game, things can feel a little rushed due to the direction this game takes. These moments can make the narrative come off a little jarring and can leave the narrative feeling that the flow is uneven at times. But these encounters are few and far in between, but are definitely noticeable. The game is at its strongest when it is segmented into an arc-like structure akin to an anime like One Piece. The reason I bring up One Piece is due to the commonality of structure between both One Piece and Tales. There are a good few arcs in this game where you are fighting alongside a new companion against a menacing antagonist to put an end to their evil plans. You will learn a great deal about the city and the people of the city, the struggles that tie back to the companions directly, and what they are fighting for. This makes for an ever-evolving journey and helps establish its characters and narrative early on. Among the many things that I've mentioned, there is one thing that the Tales series does to really enhance both its character development and world building, and that is through the use of skits. These skits are little side conversations that take place amongst the party, that are light-hearted discussions, providing backdrop to the cities and their living conditions, or pondering on events that have taken place. These skits work so well because they build a relationship between our main cast and help build and flesh out the world. These skits are told in a comic panel style, which is a clean distinguishing format that separates these scenes stylistically from a regular cutscene, and provide additional exposition for those wanting to get more from the experience. The final aspect of the story and its narrative elements that I'd like to discuss is its characters. The party members that accompany you in the game is a lot smaller to that of other franchises or even Tales games. However, I welcome this change as it gives us more time to connect with our party members and really get to know them. You will be introduced to these characters reasonably early into the game and given ample time to get to know them through both the main story and optional conversation. The party members are all really well distinguished and likable. One problem I do have is with the antagonists. Most of them feel one-dimensional and lacking in substance. This is due to the pacing moments I've mentioned prior, where I feel the villains in this game are never given enough time to properly develop. They are serviceable overall, but there is a lot more that could have been done here, and it's a real shame. This can feel like a bit of a damper on what is overall a great experience. The game has such a well thought out world and well defined main characters that the payoff I mentioned earlier feels rewarding through the discoveries and direction of the story, not from the confrontation with the game's antagonists. Although I had this shortcoming with the game, I wouldn't say it was enough to hinder my experience, and I would still say to anyone looking for a JRPG or fantasy narrative with a strong sense of world building to try this entry into the Tales series. For this review, I will only be showing gameplay from the earlier sections of this game to avoid spoilers. The Tales series has always been a different beast when it comes to its combat loop. The Tales series isn't turn-based like many other franchises in the space. Instead, it's a more action RPG oriented experience, where you run into enemies to begin an encounter. The combat in its most basic form gives the characters 3 ground arts and 3 aerial arts. These arts are your core abilities and will be the bread and butter of how you fight your enemies. Arts can be fully customized and tailored to meet the player's playstyle. This allows for a deep pool of experimentation, but in turn allows the player a deep arsenal of tools for player expression. The range of abilities on offer in this game keep the combat fresh and exciting and create a sense of growth and change in your playstyle over the course of your experience. Using arts will cost ability gems, or AG, meaning that you can't spam these abilities, but are better to weave them in between your basic attacks, making for fluid combos. The more consistent you can keep these combos going, the more likely you are able to send your enemy into what is called a break state, where the enemy is staggered and your attacks do more damage. But the core benefit of breaking an enemy is that if they are still continuously comboed in this state, this will allow for the party to execute what is called a strike attack, which works as a finisher move for most enemies. There's so many different variants of these strike attacks, which makes achieving them always feel fresh and rewarding. Another interesting combat element is the implementation of character abilities called boost attacks. How these attacks work are varied and tied to one particular party member. These abilities can work as an enhanced attack, but they can also work as crowd control to leverage a fight. An example of this is how one character can do a charge punch which will stagger and lower the guard of shielded enemies, making it harder for them to block your attacks and knock them down temporarily. The combat loop in Tales of Arise feels refreshing because you're always learning new abilities and gaining access to new mechanics and new enemies. The game, even with 10 hours in, is still throwing new abilities at you to play with and master. The over limit, which works similar to a limit break, provides an ultimate attack to one enemy, which is its own flashy cutscene. But the cool thing about an over limit is, while you are in that state, all moves and abilities require no ability gems to use, meaning that you can spam all 6 of the abilities in your current rotation until the over limit bar expires. Most of the gameplay I've provided is centered around playing as Alphen, but all the characters in your party are playable. They all offer a unique set of abilities to make the gameplay experience different and fun for each player and their play style. There is an endless amount of fun to be had here with its gameplay and combat mechanics. This high octane action will keep you thrilled and enjoyed throughout the whole ride that is Tales of Arise. Next we're going to jump into the gameplay systems of Tales of Arise, to which there is a wealth of gameplay systems that gel with the moment-to-moment action that the combat demands. One of these systems is the camps that you find littered across each location, which allow the members to cook meals and provide buffs based on the resources that you've discovered. These temporary buffs provide you and your party an edge in battle, but this isn't the only feature that the campfires offer. The campfire allows Alphen the chance to interact with each character in the party and learn more about their personal story, which builds on narrative threads, but gameplay wise, this strengthens your relationship with said character, allowing them to unlock new abilities in their ability tree, which is a good way to segue into our next point. The skill panel in Tales of Arise works much like the Crystarium system from Final Fantasy XIII. There is a large sphere
in the middle with 5 neighboring spheres around it, and these neighboring spheres are arts or passive abilities that help keep your team alive. However, if you invest your skill points into a group of these 5 spheres, then you can activate an additional ability from the parent sphere in the center. These abilities are usually just stat increases, but it's nice to know that your time is being rewarded for investing into certain avenues of abilities. Just like every other JRPG, you will be looking for the best equipment and gear in Tales of Arise to equip and boost your player's stats. One nice addition visually is that when you purchase a new weapon, you can actually see the physical change. One minor complaint, however, I do have is that the armor that you purchase doesn't make a visual change either. This is due to the outfits in the game being obtained through finding owls, which work as the collectible for the game, and unlock cosmetics throughout your playthrough. This is a fun addition and will add extra mileage to your playtime if you're a completionist. However, it still would have been nice to see your armor change when you do purchase new armor, especially when they've done it with the weapons. The open world environment and spaces of Tales of Arise are an interesting case, as they fall into a middle ground where they aren't quite as open as exploring a big massive land, but aren't walking corridors like other JRPGs. I believe Tales of Arise strikes the right balance of size and scope for its areas and environments. There's plentiful to do in each space, a variety of side quests, resources to collect, and even docks to stop by and go fishing. This game is packed with tons of side content and unique enemy variation that feel fitting for the areas they appear in. There are also special high-level enemies that you can return to and fight in various locations throughout your journey, which makes returning to previous areas still feel challenging. Most areas in this game will have many paths that lead you off to a new area and often lead you to treasure and other exciting surprises. The way the areas are designed in this game is intentional, and everything you find in the encounter rewards you. In summary, one of the best things about Tales of Arise is how rewarding its gameplay feels and how respectful of your time the game is. If you're looking for something to play where you don't have to mindlessly grind all the time, Tales of Arise is definitely an experience worth trying, as the game will always be throwing new abilities to play with, something new to work towards, and side content to keep you occupied for days. The soundtrack for Tales of Arise is par for the course for what you'd expect from a fantasy adventure. The epic, triumphant, orchestral pieces for boss encounters, the curious, whimsical pieces for exploring the overworld. But some of these battle themes in this game had me really bopping my head. The rock-inspired battle themes were a great counterpart and really helped get the adrenaline pumping whenever facing an enemy. Although the boss fights in this game may not have been a highlight for me, the boss themes were incredible and really helped add the tension to these pivotal moments throughout this game. Now I would like to get into the voice acting. I played this game with the Japanese dub, and I believe that all the voice actors deserve props. They all met the role they were given and delivered their lines really well, and it lends to making these characters believable and as likable as they are. There's over 300 skits in this game and a great deal of cutscenes, which are all mostly voiced. So all the voice actors who worked on this game definitely deserve props, as they had a lot of dialogue to record, and I think that's a worthy note of mention, and it was a great addition to this game. The visual presentation in Tales of Arise is varied, with many different methods used to convey a scene. There are 3 main ways that a scene will carry out in Tales of Arise. The first is an anime cutscene. These are scarce and usually used alongside a big story beat. The animation studio has done great work with these cutscenes, as some of these scenes are a visual spectacle. The second form that is commonly used is the in-game cutscene. These play in engine and are voiced dialogue. These take place more frequently and are used as the primary driver for pushing the story forward. Lastly is the skits that I mentioned earlier. These are mini conversations amongst the party and usually are more fleshed out and flesh out the world or a particular character. These are optional discussions and something that has been a staple of the franchise for a while now. However, this panel by panel comic style visual is a new visual addition in Tales of Arise. The world is finely detailed with a vast variety of areas to explore, and one of the strongest parts of Tales of Arise is just how incredible and distinguished each of its major cities feel. The visuals of each of these major locations makes them instantly memorable. There is so much detail put into all of these locations. It feels as you progress, the visual awe and spectacle continues to rise, making each point of your journey recognizable. The in-between areas are full of life and creatures that inhabit it. These areas look and match the visual aesthetics of the area you have been traversing, bringing each area of Dana to life. The UI design in this game is clean and comprehensive. The menu contains everything you need. The only thing missing from the main menu, which is easily accessible via the press of a button, is a map. One addition that I really appreciated is how much the splash art would change over the course of the story. As you move through each story arc, the visual splash art on the main menu will change to represent where you are in the story and what arc you are currently set in. This was a welcoming addition and really made me feel a sense of progress throughout the story. In summary, I would like to say this bold new direction that Bandai Namco has taken the Tales franchise has laid out the groundwork for what is yet to come in the future. In one of the message from the developer videos, Hirokazu Kagiwa, the director, stated he would want to make a game, an RPG, that everyone could enjoy. With that being said, there is a game here that is accessible to a large audience of people in a genre that is usually daunting for its long run times and repetitive combat. Whilst Tales isn't the shortest game, it's respectful of your time, and if you're someone who loves the long expansive narratives that JRPGs offer, but aren't a fan of repetitive combat or turn-based encounters, then Tales of Arise may just be for you. Tales of Arise is a game that aims to breathe new life into a juggernaut of a genre with mountains of franchises, and in most departments it succeeds. It's an experience that is full of moments that will stick with me, and leaves me excited for the future entries to come. With Tales of Systeria in the past, this was the fresh reset that Bandai Namco needed and were going for, and they've pulled it off, and I'm optimistic that this is just the beginning.